Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy Donnie81. Today, guys, man, we're going to be going over the best way to spin your staff points, and also how to spin your staff points. So the best, different trees and things that you can go ahead and spend your staff points on, things like that, so that way you can go ahead and have an excellent franchise. It's my summer spinning bit, something like no other. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you turn on your post notifications so that way you never miss lit content like this. And without further ado, let's go ahead, let's get into it. So staff points are something new in this game. Of course, if you pre-ordered the game, you get 100 staff points to go along with it, I believe, for Dynasty Edition, and I believe for MVP, I believe it was like 80 or so, 80 to 60, I want to say. So staff points are the new things that allow you to have a boost when you go ahead and play throughout the game. So it's actually pretty dope, pretty cool tactic, or I guess you could call it tactic, that they added to the game. I'm definitely a big fan of it for sure. I think it's definitely pretty helpful, pretty crucial, and it just helps out a lot, to be honest with you. So let's go ahead, let's go over some of them. So as you guys can see here, man, there are tons of different staff points and things like that you can go ahead and use. As you guys can see, we have some for contracts, some for trades specifically, then the defensive coordinator has some for trenches, then some for things that happen in practice. The offensive coordinator, depending on the different coordinators and stuff, they have different things. So they have on the block, practice makes perfect again, and then of course you have your head coach, who has player growth and staff modifications as well. So all of these things definitely will come in handy, to be honest with you. So let's go ahead, let's get straight into it. So some of the best things to spend your staff points off. Let's go ahead, we're going to start with our player personnel, and we're going to look at contracts and things like that first. Now for the player personnel, personally, you can take a look at a few things, but for this one, right off the bat, I would go down the middle. Now to the left, we have some things about the increasing likelihood of free safeties, and strong safeties as well, and then of course scheme fits have increased interest, and I think the scheme fits one is what makes me probably go straight down the middle. The scheme fits is cool, I just don't think it's as crucial or as necessary. And then for this one, we have like the defensive line, and then we have some linebackers. Now sometimes it is hard to get some linebackers, so I would say that one would be a pretty good one as well, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary, to be honest with you. And then of course down the middle we have some offensive linemen, which are pretty expensive to go ahead and get to resign. So I think this definitely was a pretty smart one to go with the line guru. And then of course backfield vision, so halfbacks and fullbacks, but especially halfbacks you want to go ahead and resign. But I think this one you would automatically go down the middle just because you're worried about your linemen. So for me personally, when the start of this tree, I would go right down the middle for the linemen, and that's what I would do right off the bat. Now for this next one, we have blanket coverage, which focuses on the cornerbacks, and then we have one that focuses on the wide receivers and tight ends. Now for this one, I could say you could kind of pick and choose and go in between. Most likely I would say I would probably go with the cornerbacks, just because it seems like that, especially if you get like a good corner like Jair Alexander, and maybe you just don't have enough cap space to give him as big of a contract as he would like, you can definitely go ahead and do so by doing this. But it just depends on your team needs. So I'm not going to say left or right, but I feel like in most situations I would probably go left, because right, if you offer a wide receiver or tight end enough money, they come in anyway. You know what I'm saying? We don't really need to increase your interest, but for cornerbacks, you might have to go ahead and do that and increase the likelihood of them getting assigned with you. And of course you have one for the QBs and then one for unlockers. So unlock one player who is not interested and negotiating once per season. So that's going to be pretty cool to go ahead and use that as well. Our next video will go over how you can earn these staff points also, so stay tuned for that one. Then of course next we have this trade one right here, and for these trades, this trade one is actually pretty cool. I actually do like these. So you have the chance to trade for a 2% trade discount for CPU draft picks, and then 4% and once you get to the next tier. And then for this one, you have a 2% trade value increase for user draft picks, and then a 4% trade value increase for user draft picks. So the only reason why I would go wheeling and dealing is because it's for your own draft picks. I feel like that definitely just holds a lot more value than trading for the CPUs. So I would definitely go with the your own user. Of course, if you started off, you get a 5% trade discount on players that are 30 and older, but this actually comes in handy later down the road. So we're going to talk about that in just a second, with the very end of this talent tree that we have here. So the next one, of course, you get O-line, or a guaranteed online one, excuse me. And so that's a guaranteed trade package for a current user pick during the draft. So this would definitely go in line with wheeling and dealing. So I think that would make it even better. Then of course, quite the sale pitch. So non-X Factor user players will be valued one dev trade higher than actual in trades, which is really good. So of course, You have somebody who's like a superstar, they're going to be viewed as a superstar. X Factor, you have somebody who's a star, they're going to be viewed as a superstar, and things like that, which could definitely help you get a little bit more back in value. So that's pretty dope. And of course, here you have a discount for the CPU, and then you have an increase for users. So once again, I think I would go all to the right hand side of this, as this is beneficial to you as it goes for just strictly users, which makes it even better. And of course, you have smooth talker, so that reduces the cost of trading up during the draft. So it takes a little bit less when you trade up during the draft. You don't got to give up as much. And so I feel like just because of that, it makes this whole right side more valuable than that left side, focusing on the CPU. So that's what I would do when it comes to the player personnel, when it comes to trades. I'll focus on that right hand side as well. And of course, for contracts, we're going down the middle, and then you can pick and choose between that left and right side depending on which your team really needs more than anything. Of course, you can go ahead and get refunds on your points, but that's another trait that comes, I believe, with the head coach as well. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Now let's go into our defensive coordinator. And so our defensive coordinator is actually pretty cool. And so he has a few things. So we have trench play. So let's talk about trench play first. We'll talk about, what I would go for in trench play. Now, trench play, of course, you guys see here, you have stuff for tackling for the linebacking core. You have block shed boost for the defensive ends. And then on this side, you have some pursuit boost for the whole line by itself. And then you have hit power boost for the defensive ends as well. And then on the right hand side, you have some tackle boost for the defensive line. You have some block setting boost for defensive tackles. You have pursuit boost for the linebacker core. And then you have boost for defensive tackles and hit power. Now, in my opinion, I believe it's better just to go for this left hand side now, because I feel like defensive tackles don't always play the biggest role, and of course, depending on what defensive formation you run, defensive tackles may not even be in your formation and might not even be on the field. And so when you take that into consideration, that left hand side just makes more sense. So that's the only reason why I would go with that left hand side, honestly. Other than that, it's no real reason to go with that left hand side, but I just feel like that's the best talent tree to use, and that's the best side to go down on that talent tree. And of course, you get this one right here, which is to gain the ability to equip X factors on the defensive lineup. So that's dope. And of course, this last one boosts the strength rating for the whole defensive line by 4, and so that's definitely going to be helpful as well. Then as we go into practice makes perfect. Now I didn't select these. Now some coaches, depending on how long they've been in it or been in the game, I should say rather, they're going to have some talent trees and things like that already unlocked, and so you won't really have the decision to bounce back and forth and make that choice. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to talk about this one right here for this practice makes perfect. Now, starting off, as you guys see on this side, you get play recognition for free safeties. You get more, you get pursuit boost for free safeties, pursuit or catching boost for free safeties or safeties in general, excuse me. Then you get a boost in stamina for the linebacking core, and then you get a boost in tackling for cornerbacks. Then if we go ahead and start on this left hand side, you get a boost in play rec for corners, a boost in pursuit for corners, a boost in catching for corners. Then you get a boost in stamina for the whole secondary, and then you get a boost in tackling for safeties and strong safeties. Now, in my opinion, I think it's better to probably go with this left-hand side, as this left-hand side focuses on a more crucial position. I feel like when it comes to cornerbacks, of course, cornerbacks you most likely won't use her, whereas safety you'll probably use her, or a linebacker you might use her, which can help out with that. And so I feel like if you're actually going to play throughout it, it makes the most sense to go ahead and go with that left-hand side. And I feel like the left-hand side is just a little bit better, especially when you're focusing on that secondary, especially if you have an elite secondary. And then this one right here, this final one is boost. It's a press. Boost is press for cornerbacks as well. So that's really, really, really good also. Now let's go ahead and go to our offensive coordinator and some of the things that they go ahead and they have. And so for your offensive coordinator, you have just a couple of things. So on the block right here, as you guys can see, you start off getting that ability to equip X factors in the offensive lineup. Then you get a boost in impact blocking for fullbacks, and then of course you get a boost in finesse for offensive linemen. And then on this other side of the tree, you get a boost in impact blocking for tight ends, and then of course you get a boost for run block power for offensive linemen. Now, in my opinion, I feel like that right side is definitely a little bit better. The fullbacks normally won't even see the field, and so I feel like having that boost for the tight ends and having that boost for the run block power for the linemen is just a little bit more powerful and have a bigger impact in the game. So I feel like that's what I would go with on the block one. Then of course you have boosts for pass blocking for tight ends by 3, and then on this side you have the boost for offensive linemen, and then on the left side you have the boost for wide receivers impact blocking. Now I feel like I would go on the left side here, and the reason why I would go for true grinders here is because I feel like offensive linemen normally have some pretty high awareness to begin with, so it's no need to really boost that up anymore. But I feel like wide receivers actually have some pretty poor blocking anyway, so why not try to get some assistance in that blocking aspect right there, because they're normally always on the field every single play. And then for the last one we have is boost the strength rating for offensive linemen by 4. And so that is the weight room one. Now let's go ahead and let's go under practice makes perfect. So for this one, of course, it's the boost injury rating for all offensive players. So that's pretty good for you. Then of course you have catching traffic on this right hand side. For tight ends, you have boost for carrying, but for quarterbacks, boost in stamina for that backfield that you have. Then a boost. Oh, okay, not just yet. And then of course on this left hand side we have a boost for catching traffic for wide receivers, a boost in carrying for halfbacks and fullbacks, and then a boost in stamina for wide receivers and tight ends. Now, in my opinion, I feel like the only reason I'm going left hand side is because, one, to start off, I feel like tight ends already have some pretty good catching traffic because they're a bigger body player. So you have to keep that in mind. They're definitely a bigger body player, and so their catching traffic does not need to get boosted that much. Now, I feel like carrying for quarterbacks, if your quarterback is immobile, it doesn't really matter. But for running backs, you don't want your running backs fumbling left and right, and so ball security for running backs, which makes this side even more valuable on this left hand side for practice makes perfect. Then of course boosting the stamina is definitely going to be crucial because you want your big name wide receivers in pretty much all the time during the game, and so this just makes that left hand side just so much more valuable than that right hand side. Then of course you have fancy footwork, so it boosts the release of your wide receivers. And then right here you have concentration, so it boosts the catching for halfbacks and fullbacks, and then boosts the catching for wide receivers and tight ends. And I would go to the right hand side here unless you plan to really use your halfbacks or fullbacks in the receiving game, but most people don't. And so for that reason, I would go ahead and I would just boost the wide receivers and tight ends. So I would go to the left hand side and then end off on the right. Then as you guys see here, we have our head coach. So for player growth, now this is really dope. So player growth starting off, man, it decreases the multi-week injury recovery time. So that's pretty dope also. So you get your players back a little bit faster. Now this one right here increases the XP gains for safeties. This one increases it for linemen. Then this next one, of course, you have right here, increases it for the defensive line. This one increases it for your halfbacks and fullbacks. Then the next one goes ahead and increases it for the linebacking core. This one increases it for the wide receivers and tight end, so that your receiving core. Then this last one does it for the cornerbacks, and this one does it for your quarterbacks. Now, in my opinion, I feel like you can kind of bounce back and forth. You can really choose what you really need depending on your team and the way that your team is built. Now, I feel like this is a really good one with this one. It depends on how you build your team. There is no really which one is better or which one is worse. I feel like it's a little bit easier offensively to get that XP just because, you know, they just can make big plays and stuff like this. It's talking about training. So, you know, if you're talking about XP in training camp and things like that, when you're just practicing, it's pretty simple. I feel like they'll definitely get it more, or they would definitely get XP a lot faster than they would if, you know, you were a defensive player. So I feel like the defensive is what really needs it. But once again, you can kind of bounce back and forth depending on the way that your team is built. Then of course for this one, all players in your team count as scheme fits during training, which is pretty cool. And then of course slows ratings progression for a regression for one season for one position, and reveal a hidden development trait for one player once per season. Now, I feel like the hidden development trait is cool, but I don't think it's as useful as this Fountain of Youth. Now, this Fountain of Youth is actually really good because if you have a quarterback, say for example Russell Wilson is getting up in age, and so he will begin to regress, though he can still play at a pretty high level. But if you could just slow down that regression, hold on just a little bit longer until you can get another nice decent a nice decent quarterback, you should be a-okay. And so I think this Fountain of Youth definitely has high value, though this reveal hidden development trait is pretty good. If he has star trait, if he has like star or something like that, or, you know, then you're going to be looking like that really that good, but still could be pretty good. But I think you can kind of reveal this a little bit easier, their hidden developments, especially if you just allow them to play. So that's the other thing. Now, next up, we have this one. We have for staff modifications, we have Eye for Talent. So player personnel talents cost 10% less. Now, this is probably one of the ones I would just get done first, just because it makes the most sense. You know what I'm saying? Then, of course, we have this one. The offensive coordinator talents cost 10% less, which is pretty cool. Then the defensive coordinator talents cost 10% less. And then it kind of just bounces back and forth between, you know, you get talent refunds for defensive and offensive, and then of course you get the hiring bonus for offensive and hiring bonus for defensive. So it just depends on what side of the ball you really need to work on more than anything. And so for that case, I would not say one is better than the other. It just depends on what you need at that moment in time. And then for these two, of course, you get access to an additional focus player through weekly strategy. And of course, you can reset one talent tree for offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or player personnel once per a season. So if you need to go ahead and just scrap it just because you just want to scrap it for some reason, then there you go. You can go ahead and knock that out. So these talent trees are actually really good. Let me know down below in the comment section if you agree with what I would say, you know, this is the best one, this is the worst one, or if you decide, you know, maybe I think this one is a little bit better than the other. Let me know down below in the comment section. Like I said, we will will have a video coming out shortly on how you can go ahead and earn these staff points as well, especially if you guys didn't pre-order any editions. You know, you just need some staff points. We're going ahead and go into that. But other than that, man, it's your word on these plays, and we out of here. Peace.